Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 4th of January 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So a fresh new thread from Terence here today about EIP 4844. This was recapping or providing some notes on the latest EIP 4844 implementers call from yesterday. So you can see a summary of this in the thread, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But it seems things are moving pretty nicely, as I've been saying in the past. There are, I wouldn't call them roadblocks, but there are things that kind of get worked on because they've discovered a better way to do it, or they've discovered a more efficient way to do it, a more effective way to do it. And there's details about this in Terence's thread here, but it's great to see that that's still ongoing because, as I've said before, there are these things that still need to be worked out before it can actually be included on chain. And if they're not worked out, then obviously it can't be included on mainnet. That's why we didn't include it with Shanghai. Honestly, I know people are really obviously optimistic about 4844. They're really looking forward to it. They're really excited about it, but it just wasn't ready for Shanghai, and that's why it didn't go in. And then trying to ship it into Shanghai would have probably delayed Shanghai out 3 months later than when it's going to be delivered, which is obviously March/April, the current kind of estimates on the delivery time frame there, and we want to get those withdrawals shipped as soon as possible. So I think the decision to push back 4844 to the hard fork after Shanghai is looking better and better as the days go by. But yeah, you can give this thread a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, and it's got some links to some more information about this as well for you to take a look at. All right, we have a tweet here from Superfizz today, who said, why would we bother scaling Ethereum and lowering the cost of transactions if it's not going to make ETH very valuable very quickly? Because this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. Now, this is talking to a broader point that I see people maybe bringing up more so lately than they have in the past, where they'll basically ask, hey, the fees on Ethereum are relatively high, right? Ethereum's daily fee revenue, even in a bear market, is $2 to $3 million. Most of that fee revenue is burned, and that leads us to the meme of ultrasound money and a deflationary ETH, or that leads us to offsetting a lot of that existing ETH inflation that we have. Even though it's not much, it still exists, right? And then people will ask, well, what happens when these layer 2s gain adoption, and then the activity from layer 1 just migrates to layer 2, and layer 1 Ethereum becomes sort of like a ghost chain? And I've gone through this before on the Refuel countless times, so I don't want to hit on that point specifically, but I do want to hit on this point of some people thinking that we should be basically keeping layer 1 restricted and optimizing for the ultrasound money meme, optimizing for a deflationary ETH, rather than optimizing for more block space for applications, more scalability for users. I think that's the complete wrong way to think about it, because there are two kind of schools of thought here when it comes to block space demand. I think there's the school of thought of small blocks, so to speak. It leads to higher fees, leads to leads to fewer transactions, but higher fees, paying for each transaction, which leads to lots of daily fee revenue, which is what we have today in Ethereum, right? Or at least on Ethereum layer 1. But then there is the second school of thought of, okay, well, why don't we create abundant block space, right? And then we have lots and lots of transactions. They pay less fees, but adding them all up together would equal the same or more fee revenue than we currently have today. And I subscribe to that second school of thought because, and I have to kind of clarify this by saying I subscribe to the second school of thought for layer 2s. I don't think that layer 1 should be doing that. That's a monolithic chain, and I've talked about why I don't believe monolithic layer 1 chains are long-term sustainable plenty of times before, but we shouldn't be limiting layer 1 scalability for layer 2. Some people don't even want to see EIP 4844 shipped because they think that there'll be too many users who migrate to layer 2s, and then the fee revenue on layer 1 will go down so much that it won't even matter anymore for burning ETH, and then ETH's value will go down because of that. And I've also said before how I believe that most of ETH's value doesn't even come from its fee revenue and from the burn. I think that's actually a bonus, and that plays out over the much longer term in terms of value capture for ETH. It's great to have. It works to keep the Ethereum monetary policy in a symbiotic relationship. It works to ensure that we don't have freeloaders on the network, that people are paying what they need to be paying in order to keep the network decentralized. So the costs of keeping the network decentralized and online aren't too high for people that run the full nodes, that obviously run the validators and all that good stuff there, which I've also discussed before. I mean, obviously, if you've been listening and watching the Refuel for a while, you know I've gone through all of these points, but I'm seeing the narrative kind of shift, and that's why I thought it would bring it up today, because I don't want the community to get itself into a place where you have the ultrasound money camp, let's just call them the ultrasound money camp, where they care a lot about driving value to ETH, but they also believe that a lot of the value that gets driven to ETH comes from its fee revenue. And so if we lower the overall fee revenue, at least in the short to medium term, because users have moved to layer 2s, that's net bad for Ethereum. And then there are the, there are the people in a different camp who still believe in ultrasound money, but don't believe in sacrificing scalability to get there. We believe that, and I fall into this camp, of course, we believe that we should do everything we can to scale layer 1 to help the layer 2s out so users can get all the value they can out of that. And then if this blockchain thing, if this crypto thing actually has worldwide product market fit that we think it does, if it actually has mass adoption potential, then over time, those, small transactions that, those small amount of transactions that pay larger fees per transaction will naturally convert into lots of transactions paying smaller fees that add up to the same, if not more, fee revenue than we have today. And this isn't just even to speak about all the other points that I brought up in the past, how I think that layer 1 Ethereum is always going to have some level of activity on it, and I think that activity is going to actually be a lot, not a small amount of activity either. I mean, even in the depths of the bear market right now, even with layer 2 adoption growing, the Ethereum, gas prices seem to have found, the Ethereum revenue seems to have found a floor around $2 to $3 million per day, and that obviously leads to ETH being burned and all that good stuff as well. But my main point is that I really want to avoid this splintering in the community, and I really do think that people need to understand that the Ethereum network is not optimizing for ultrasound money as like a first principle thing. I think overall the Ethereum network is optimizing for like the priority thing that it's optimizing, I should say, for scale. Because without scale, we don't have anything. And if Ethereum doesn't scale, then these other chains will actually outcompete it over the longer term. And then if ETH won't be worth anything anyway, because Ethereum will have lost, Ethereum will be relegated as a network that has been, like what Bitcoin is in the process of being done to, right? We all know that Bitcoin, for all intents and purposes, besides its, one niche use case that it doesn't really do anything else. And then it's losing market share rapidly to everything else in this industry. And that will continue to happen as time goes on. Now, I don't want that same thing happening to Ethereum. That would be the worst case scenario for Ethereum. It would mean that all the time that I and many others have spent building this project up was for nothing, because of the fact that for some reason, some group of people thought that we should just focus on not scaling Ethereum and instead focus on driving as much value to ETH as possible via the fee burn, which I think is the wrong way to go about it. And I could go on for a long time about this, but I don't want to spend the whole episode talking about this. But I guess the TLDR is that I think the Ethereum network's first priority, at least right now, should be scale. I've talked about how censorship resistance is a more important priority, but that's already happening, right? That's happening in parallel to scaling. But I think that even censorship resistance doesn't mean anything if the network is not actually able to be used by the majority of people around the world or by all people around the world. That's what we're aiming for, right? We're aiming for global mass adoption of the Ethereum network. We're doing it via layer 2s and obviously layer 3s and higher things like that, like rollups on rollups and all that stuff as well, but none of that works unless Ethereum layer 1 scales to make that work. Layer 2s aren't going to be able to have cheaper fees without EIP 4844, without dank sharding, without the Verge, without other similar upgrades coming to the network. And Ethereum as a network will not be able to offer what it offers, a decentralized settlement layer, without being censorship resistant. That's why we have the parallel track of building more censorship resistance into Ethereum to ensure that keeps going on. And ultimately, the Ethereum network needs to be secure as well. So we are conscious of driving value to ETH and not diluting ETH as an asset and making sure the value flows to ETH. But as I said, there's no point in that happening. There's no point in having a secure network if no one's using it, right? So that's why I think scalability, user-facing, user-affected upgrades to the network should be prioritized, which they are, but they're also being worked on in parallel amongst a bunch of other things too. So that's just something to think about. If you do fall into the hardcore ultrasound money camp of, we really need to keep things limited because we need high fees on Ethereum in order to drive value to ETH, I would very much encourage you to challenge that assumption with everything that I have said over the last, 5 minutes, and just ask yourself one question. Is it actually going to matter that ETH isn't, burning as many fees as it is today on layer 1, at least for the short to medium term, if no one's using the chain, right? That's actually a worse outcome because that means the Ethereum network will be abandoned. Ethereum will lose its market share to other networks, and ETH as an asset will go down in price as well. Logically, that's what I think would happen. So let's keep the priorities straight here. Let's make sure that we can scale Ethereum to the world, but let's also make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that Ethereum is only secured by a valuable ETH, because people only validate because ETH is valuable, and they put ETH up for because they're getting rewards in ETH, and ETH is valuable enough to justify that. And also the economic security from ETH being worth a lot gives us tens of billions of dollars of economic security and all the stuff that falls off of that as well. But yeah, I'm going to leave that one at that. Just thought it was worth discussing because I saw Superfizz's tweet today. All right, so speaking of things losing market share, I mentioned before that Bitcoin has been losing market share to basically everything else in crypto for quite a while now, especially Ethereum, right? And it's basically lost all of its use cases to Ethereum. I mean, even the use case of money has been lost to stablecoins and ETH. ETH is used as money much more than BTC. But I don't want to bash Bitcoin here. I just want to focus on a tweet that David Hoffman put out today that you may have found confusing. So he just put out a tweet saying, the lappening is going to be 10 times easier than the flippening. And this stemmed from the conversation David and I were having about the flippening itself, because I was looking at ETH BTC today, and obviously ETH BTC went up a bit, but I was looking at that 600-day range that it has been in, and I was just admiring it. I was like, this is just crazy. I mentioned it before. It's crazy because traditionally in bear markets, you expect everything to bleed against Bitcoin because it's a risk-off environment. And Bitcoin is considered the quote-unquote least risky asset to hold on to, right? But that didn't happen this time. In 2022, ETH is flat against Bitcoin. And if you say that 2022 is like 2018, that is absolutely amazing. So what happens when demand comes back? What happens when when people go risk on again? Well, logically, ETH BTC should start going up, right? Like, it shouldn't go down. There's no reason for it to go down, especially because of all the other things Ethereum has going for it, right? To add to that bullish case. So I was like, I think the flippening is guaranteed. I mean, I've thought that for quite a while. I don't know timelines here. Obviously, it's very hard to predict that. I'm actually surprised it's taken this long, considering how much work Ethereum has had to do to get to the point where it could actually flip Bitcoin, whereas Bitcoin hasn't had to do anything and still remained at number one. I guess that speaks to Bitcoin's last remaining dominant, thing over the other networks is that Lindy and that network effect. But then David said, well, I don't look at it like that, right? I look at it as a lappening, where once the flippening happens, it doesn't stop there, right? It's not like Ethereum flips Bitcoin in market cap and just stays the same market cap as Bitcoin. No, it can keep going. It can keep going forever, and Bitcoin market cap can actually go down and can remain stagnant, and Ethereum's market cap can keep going up. There does exist a world where Bitcoin's market cap is, say $1 trillion, and Ethereum's market cap is $2 trillion. Just throwing numbers out there. And that would represent the lappening, where this is a term that David Hoffman has coined, where essentially Ethereum has lapped Bitcoin, has doubled Bitcoin's market cap. There exists that reality, and there exists a reality where it goes even further than that, where it goes, I guess, like 10 times that. I mean, obviously I'm talking way into the future, but that does exist, those realities. So when I think about it like that, well, I kind of really understand the point here. It's like the flippening, even though Ethereum's make a big deal about it, even though it's been talked about for a very long time, it doesn't imply that Ethereum just stops there and just basically goes up in tandem with Bitcoin from that point on. The ETH BTC ratio could one day go to 1, right? Like, that's one for one, as in like 1 BTC equals 1 ETH. So let's just say BTC is worth $30,000. ETH could be worth $30,000 as well. That would be 1 equals 1, right? That would be ETH BTC equals 1. Now, I don't know timelines here. I don't know even if ETH would get to that point, right? It would lap it that much. But I do know, and I do believe, and I have believed for a very, very long time, that ETH will flip BTC based on fundamentals. It's not based on, like, predominantly on just narratives and memes and just, hopium. It really is based on those fundamentals that Ethereum has worked really hard to ship. I mean, the merge is one of those massive ones, and that took such a long time to get to mainnet. So if you are a patient person like I am, I mean, it has been a really long time, but you've stayed the course. And I have stayed the course on the flippening. I've never wavered from that. Even when ETH BTC was crushed in 2019, I still maintained that the flippening was going to happen, because, I mean, even back in 2019, I knew about the merge, or at least the issue introduction that was coming with the merge. I knew about 1559 and all the other things that Ethereum had going for it, like DeFi. So for me, seeing the flippening happen will be just an amazing thing. But then once it's over, I'll be like, okay, well, who cares about Bitcoin anymore? Yes, we can meme this thing called the lappening, but Ethereum just becomes its own kind of beast where it can just keep going, right? I mean, it already is its own beast, but in terms of like eyes of the wider market and even outside of crypto, Ethereum being number one, I think is going to, one, shatter a lot of narratives around crypto. and also lead to a lot of new attention on Ethereum and ETH as an asset, of course. All right, we have a fresh article from Dino Eggs today titled Progressive Ethereum Security. In this article, Dino Eggs outlines a path for dApp developers to gain fast time to market and progressively leverage Ethereum security as scaling solutions mature. I highly recommend giving this post a read. It is really great. I really love this because essentially there is a security spectrum, as you can see pointed out by Dino Eggs here, across the Ethereum landscape, where essentially you have chains that are secured by Ethereum, but in different ways. You have rollups, which can, in theory, be fully secured by Ethereum, where both the data and the proofs are posted to Ethereum layer 1. You don't have to rely on anything except Ethereum layer 1. Once, obviously, there are permissionless and decentralized fraud proofs, and there's no kind of, I guess, like multi-sig that can upgrade the rollup and things like that. I'm talking about like, those fully decentralized rollups. Once they're secured by Ethereum with both their data and proofs posted there, you don't have to rely on anyone else. Then there are the hybrid solutions like a Validium where they store data off-chain, and that means that if the data is being withheld from you or is lost, then your funds are essentially frozen. They can't be stolen because the proofs are still posted to Ethereum layer 1, but they can be frozen, right? Which is, I guess, not, I mean, it's only slightly better, I guess, but that is still not the best. Obviously, rollups are the gold standard, but there are Validiums, and they do have their place, such as, I think, things like NFTs and other stuff like that. And then you have other things on this spectrum as well, like other chains that are not secured by Ethereum, like the Polygon POS chain, for example, or other side chains that may or may not be EVM compatible. And yeah, you have, I guess, like nuances in that, like optimistic rollups versus ZK rollups, Validiums versus another construct of data off-chain, and then other things around that. And that's what Dino Eggs' article goes into, along with some thoughts on EIP 4844 as well, and a few other things. So definitely go give this article a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Right, an interesting tweet I came across today from the co-founder of Safe, or formerly known as Gnosis Safe. He put out a tweet where he said, 1 out of every 5 mainnet blocks already contains 1 or more Safe transactions. This is pretty cool. Like, that means that 20% of Ethereum mainnet blocks contain 1 or more Safe transactions. Now, for those of you who don't know, Gnosis Safe is a multi-sig wallet on Ethereum, built by Gnosis, now known as Safe. But they're more than a multi-sig, because not only can you do just typical multi-sig stuff where you custody your assets there and you need like a 2 of 3 or a 3 of 5 or a whatever 5 of 8 in order 5 of 8 signatures in order to approve a transaction. It doesn't just limit itself to custody of assets. You can do anything with this. You can sign any message you want. You can interact with whatever you want on chain. The Safe app itself on the web app has access to a lot of the DeFi apps, and you can actually connect your Safe wallet to that. And I've done it plenty of times, and it works really well. You can sign messages, you can vote on things. So it doesn't really surprise me that this is the case, because operations on chain such as market makers and people doing possibly MEV stuff, and people doing anything with other groups of people, more than likely than not, probably going to be using a Gnosis Safe to sign transactions, right? Because they want to do it through a multi-sig rather than a hot wallet, like a just a vanilla MetaMask wallet or something like that. And multi-sigs inherently are very, very secure, and Gnosis Safe is by far the most secure multi-sig on Ethereum. I believe they're one of the only ones that are on chain, because they've been around for a very long time. There's a massive bug bounty in there, because that stores, I think, over $100 billion worth of assets or something like that. So there is obviously a massive bug bounty just in and of itself on that, where essentially if you can drain the assets out of Gnosis Safe, then you can potentially have access to a lot of assets, right? So there is a linear network effect there. But I think people that have safes are probably more inclined to do kind of to do on-chain transactions than not, simply because of the reasons I outlined before. And there are a few other stats in here as well talking about this, talking about Gnosis Safe on, or I should say Safe on the Polygon POS chain, where it's 1 out of every 4 blocks that contains at least 1 Safe transaction, which is 25%. And there's other networks as well that you can give a look to on Dune Analytics here, because Safe isn't just on Ethereum mainnet, it is on the Polygon POS chain. And it is also on BSC. It's actually quite low on BSC, which is kind of funny, right? Like you can see here, the percentage is actually very low on BSC. I mean, if I look at the most recent, it's only about 1.2% of blocks contain a Gnosis Safe transaction. Then you can look at Gnosis Chain, which is a bit higher at about 2.3%. And then you can go down to Optimism, which is very, very low as well at 0.1%. So Ethereum mainnet has a lot more. I'd actually be curious to dive into this, and maybe some of you have
the data around this and see exactly what these transactions are and why Ethereum mainnet seems to be Ethereum and Polygon seem to be outliers here compared to the other networks. I'd be curious to see that there. But it also may be a function of just the different players on these networks and the assets as well on these networks and the TVL and things like that. But if you've got extra data here, I'd love to see it and send it over to me. But you can check out this for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, Brian Armstrong of Coinbase here today tweeted out something where he said early days, but it's coming together. And then he linked to something called coinbase.com/web3, which is basically Coinbase's portal to, I guess, like the Web3 ecosystem here. And you can see that they have a really user-friendly, I guess, interface here. I've gone on record before saying that Coinbase's interface isn't for me. It's probably too user-friendly or too noob-friendly. I don't need something like this. I'm obviously more of an advanced user, but it's still relatively easy to navigate around. But you can see here on this Web3 page, at the top, they have like new and trending apps that you can check out. They have popular apps here enlisted in different categories on all the networks that they support, which is right now just Ethereum and the Polygon POS chain. In the future, they're going to be supporting other Ethereum related networks like the layer 2s on Ethereum. And then you can click into it and it gives you all the information about it. Like if I click into it, I want to see what it does here. You can connect your wallet to something like OpenSea, open the dApp itself. And it feels like they're building just a native Web3 integration directly into, I guess, the Coinbase website here in order to help newer people on board onto Web3, which I obviously think is really, really important it's funny. I was talking earlier about how scaling Ethereum is probably the most important thing, or most likely is the most important thing to be doing over the short to medium term from here, even longer term. But like, scale doesn't really mean anything if we don't have users getting their feet wet in it, or users using that scale. And that's what Coinbase does. They act as that top of funnel in order to get people to use more on-chain stuff. So as I said, right now they support Ethereum and Polygon, the Polygon POS chain. In the future, I expect them to support different, obviously other different networks like other layer 1s out there, but also all the layer 2s on Ethereum, at least the most popular ones on Ethereum. But you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link this in the YouTube description below. All right, some big news out of Astaria today. It opened its repos to the public. So its GitHub repositories to the public here. The codebase represents the cumulative hard work of the Astaria team over the last 8 months. Now, disclosure here, I am an angel investor in Astaria, which for those of you who don't know, are an NFT collateralized lending market using their, what they're calling a 3 a.m. model, which is their novel model here. But if you're a developer and you're interested in, I guess, forking the codebase, looking over the codebase, seeing what they're up to, seeing what they've built, well, it's now available for you to do so on this Astaria Core GitHub public repository, which of course I'll link in the YouTube description below for you to check out. I always think it's interesting for developers to highlight this because I know a lot of developers love reading other developers' code in order to get a feel for it, in order to learn from it, in order to see how it works under the hood and possibly fork it off and improve it themselves or add or contribute to it themselves, because obviously the entire Ethereum ecosystem is built on open source. So if you want to contribute to that, you want to contribute to as many of projects that excite you as possible, and maybe Astaria is one of those projects. So you can go check that out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, last up here was a tweet that I put out earlier today because I was thinking about how crypto comes under fire a lot for the amount of scammers that exist in this ecosystem. So I put out this tweet where I said, humans have been scamming, grifting, and defrauding each other for thousands of years. I think the main reasons why there's so much focus on the crypto scams is because of the scale of the scams and the unparalleled transparency that crypto gives to all of it. So I think that the transparency point is probably more important than the scale point, because think about this for a sec. There are a lot of different scams that even exist even today in different industries that we just don't know about, right? They happen behind closed doors. They happen in closed meetings and opaque meetings. They happen covertly because people don't really want to put shine a light on their scams, right? They happen, I guess, like in the real world where even with the internet, you don't have coverage of everything happening in the real world, right? And you can't just like look at everything happening in the real world like you can on a blockchain. And that brings me to my point. On a blockchain, on a public blockchain, on pretty much almost all of them that aren't privacy by default, you can see everything that's happening. So you have God mode view of every scam happening on Ethereum, because the Ethereum chain allows you to have God mode view of it. Anything that you see happening on chain, any Ponzi that you see, any kind of fraud that you see, any tokens being moved around, you can look at that. You can do your on-chain sleuthing, and there are people out there who do it, like Zach XBT, and you can see everything that's going on, right? You can see where the money's going. Yes, it can go into a centralized exchange and it becomes more opaque, but even that can be tracked, right? Even that can be tracked relatively easily, actually, especially by companies like Chain Analysis. So essentially, Ethereum gives you God mode over the scams, God mode view over the scams. Imagine if you had that view into all the scams that went off on in every single industry in the world. Imagine if you had God mode view over all the scams that happen to tourists over the world. You would think that tourism in general is a scam. You would be like, well, why would I go on a holiday? I'm just going to get scammed, right? Or the tourism industry is a scam. Like visiting other countries, it's all a scam, right? If you were able to actually see all of that going on, if it was that transparent for you, and it's not just tourism. I'll just use that as a basic example that we're all probably used to, right? We've all probably attempted to be scammed or heard of someone that got scammed. Right? And then imagine if you had an inside view into everyone that takes advantage of you, whether that's when you go to a retail store and a salesman is taking advantage of you because they're upselling you on something that gives them more profit and gives them more commission, right? Imagine if you had a view into how much commission they were getting off that, or how much they've done that to other people, or how many people that's happened to across like all the retail stores in the world, right? Imagine if you had a God mode view into everything that happens at the banks, like everything shady that happens behind closed doors at the banks. We don't have that view, but imagine if you did. You would think that absolutely everything in the life is a scam because you'd be able to see it. Now, thankfully, we don't have a view into all of that happening because it would be quite depressing. But I think that's why, at least the main reason why, crypto gets so much flack is because it's all open. It's all transparent, right? And even if it isn't transparent for a time, eventually it comes out, and it comes out in a really big way. Then you can use all the on-chain data, which on decentralized networks is impossible or near impossible to actually alter, and you can have a extremely strong guarantee that that is correct, that it actually happened, right? Actually, you pretty much have a 100% guarantee that that happened, unless you can prove that it was tampered with. And as I said, it's extremely hard to tamper with it because you need to take over the network essentially to do that. So when thinking about it like that, there is no reason other than how transparent it is that crypto cops so much flack for the scams going on and other industries don't. It really is just that transparency. And the transparency leads to the ability to see it at scale. Obviously, with the FTX thing, it was huge, right? It was a massive scam, but we're able to see it. We're able to link all these things together because of a lot of the on-chain data that we have access to. And we're able to see it because we saw what SBF and Alameda were doing on-chain as well. They were farming things. You saw them dumping things. We saw them sending stuff to exchanges and all that sorts of stuff, and all the behavior that they did. Obviously, no one or barely anyone was able to see that they actually what they were actually doing with obviously taking customer deposits and YOLOing it into things. But that came out eventually too, and then you can look back on chain and see and map it and see exactly what they did. So you don't have that luxury with pretty much any other industry in the world. Even the internet doesn't give you that much transparency, right? Because a lot of the internet, a lot of what happens behind closed doors in private databases where you never get access to that data. Whereas with crypto, you get access to pretty much everything except what happens at centralized exchanges. But even then, you can do your own on-chain sleuthing and work it out and have reasonable, I guess, assumptions based on that activity. So I just wanted to point that out to people because I just see too many people hating on crypto because it's full of scams, blah, blah, blah. But really, when people say that to you, when people say, hey, I don't like crypto because it's full of scams, it's full of frauds, it's full of grifts, tell them, the world is full of this, but the only reason you see it happening in crypto is because crypto makes it transparent. And I think that, for a reasonable person, that should start a conversation, and you should be able to talk reasonably with them about this and get your point across there. But that's something that I was thinking about today, and I kind of had an epiphany about it. I was like, wow, okay, it really is just that transparency, which I think I've talked about before, but I never really kind of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for here? I never kind of contextualized it in that God mode view that I'm talking about, right? Where, for those of you who don't know, God mode is basically a term that comes from computers. I mean, it probably predates computers, but it's used heavily within the computing industry, or the technology industry, and also the gaming industry, where essentially you have like a complete view of everything that's happening. And obviously the term God mode comes from, a mythical being like a god having view over everything that's happening. But like, if you do have that view, which we do with crypto, then that's why the scams seem so prevalent. And that's why it seems like all of crypto is a scam, because we see all of that happening. Now, in saying all of that, before I finish up today's episode, on the flip side, we also get to see all the good stuff happening really transparently as well. All the growth, all the donations happening with things like Gitcoin grants rounds, where the money's going, we can trace that. We can also call out the scammers, which is positive as well. And we can also catch these things earlier than you can in other industries because of that transparency. So there is good and bad to the transparency. But yeah, the narrative that crypto is just all scams and that's all it's good for, I think it really does just stem from the fact that it's all transparent and that media can run with it. Media can highlight things. It's easy for anyone on Twitter to run with it. But yeah, that's my main point there. But I think on that note, I'm going to end it there for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.